Today we are going to start with the topic express and implied conditions and warranties. First we will see implied condition and then after we will see implied warranties. Okay. First of all we will see what is express and what is implied. Express conditions and warranties are those which are mentioned in the contract clearly because they are express, and implied conditions and warranties are those which are mentioned by law. Okay, see here it is clearly mentioned in a contract of sale of goods, conditions and warranties may be express or implied. Express conditions and warranties are those which are expressly provided in the contract. Implied conditions and warranties are those which the law implies unless the parties mention something contrary. Okay, so the terms and conditions or the terms in a contract where the buyer has insisted, made it mandatory, that is a condition, and which is not mandatory, which is collateral to the main purpose, that is a warranty, that we have already seen in the meaning. Okay, now here if it is clearly mentioned, expressly mentioned, then that is an express condition or warranty. Now here we are going to see about implied conditions. Now what are implied conditions? Means where the law implies that this is a condition, and if this is broken, the contract stands repudiated, the contract stands cancelled. Okay, so first is what? Implied condition. First we are going to see implied condition. The first is condition as to title. See, when the seller is selling, he should have the title to the goods so that he can transfer the ownership from him to the buyer. Okay, so the seller who is doing SALE, sale, he should have the title to sell. And if he is doing agreement to sell, then he also should have that title, that right to sell. So at the time of sale, the property should pass, the ownership should pass, or just generally when we say the title must be clear. Okay, the title must be clear means what? The seller should have a title to transfer the ownership from him to the buyer. This is an implied condition as to title. Okay, now the second is what? Sale by description. This is also an implied condition, that when the sale takes place by description, the seller is describing the goods to the buyer, it is an implied condition that the goods should correspond with the description. Where, see, it is mentioned. This is mentioned in section 15. Section 14 tells about condition as to title. Section 15 is telling about sale by description. Where there is a contract for the sale of goods by description, there is an implied condition that the goods shall correspond with the description. So whatever the seller describes, accordingly the goods must be there. If the goods are not according to the description, the contract can be cancelled. Okay, so the circumstances here can arise like in different ways. The first is what? Where the buyer has not seen the goods but relies upon the description made by the seller. Means the first circumstances which can arise in sale by description is that the buyer fully relies upon what the seller describes because he has not seen the goods. Here one case is there called as Varley versus Whip, in which the facts are like the seller is selling a ripping machine and that ripping machine is not seen by the buyer, and what the seller is doing, he is telling to the buyer, my machine was new the last year. It means it is just 1 year old, means I have used the machine just for 1 year. So without seeing the machine, the buyer purchases it. At that time, the first time when he sees the machine, he comes to know that it's not just 1 year old, it is been used for many years, it's very old, so it is not according to the description, therefore he can cancel the contract because the implied condition is been broken. Okay, now this is the first circumstances which can arise where the buyer has not seen the goods, he relies upon the seller's description. Now the second circumstances is what? Where the buyer sees the goods but he is not relying upon what he sees because the defect may not be apparent, may not be seen by his eyes. He relies upon the description made by the seller. Means here the seller is describing the goods also and the buyer is seeing the goods, but the buyer does not rely upon what he sees, he relies upon what the seller describes. Okay, see, where the buyer has seen the goods but relies not on what he has seen but what has been stated to him, and the deviation of the goods from the description is not apparent. Okay, now in this one case is there, Nicholson versus Smith. It is an auction where the auctioneer is telling about some napkins and tablecloths, and what he is doing, he is describing them as dating from the 7th century. The buyer sees the napkin, but by just seeing, he can't come to a conclusion that it is of a 7th century or 10th or 18th century. He just is seeing it, but he relies upon the auctioneer, because the auctioneer is telling dating from the 7th century, and actually when the buyer purchases it, he comes to know that the napkins and the tablecloths are of 18th century. So the contract can be cancelled because it is not according to the description. This is the second circumstances which can arise in sale by description. And the third is what? Packaging or packing of the goods can sometimes be a part of description, when the buyer has clearly mentioned that I want the goods packed in such and such box or such and such size and all. Means in the small bottles or big bottles or a barrel or in a tin or a can. Means here he is specifically telling about what? The condition. Means he wants the goods in this packing only. And what the seller is doing? Seller is agreeing for that. Means seller is telling to the buyer that I will give you the goods in this way, in this packing material and all. And actually they are not. Then the buyer can cancel the contract. Okay. This is the second implied condition as to sale by description. The first implied condition we saw, that was sale condition as to title. The second we saw sale by description, and in that we saw these circumstances where description is very much material. Okay. Now the third implied condition is what? Implied condition as to quality of fitness. Now here something different is there. Normally in a contract of sale there is no implied condition as to quality or fitness, because the seller will not come to know for what you are taking the goods, for what you are purchasing the goods. Okay, so there is no implied condition as to quality or fitness of the goods for a particular purpose. The buyer must examine the goods thoroughly, and before he buys, he has to satisfy himself that his purpose will be fulfilled, and he has to buy it. The seller will not be responsible. Okay, because there is no implied condition here. However, there is always a however, there is always a exceptions. However, when the buyer is expressly telling to the seller that this is the purpose for which I want the goods, when he is expressly telling his purpose and he relies upon the seller, and the seller is also telling that okay, I will do the choice, I will give you the goods, and we can see that your purpose is fulfilled. If certain things are being told by the seller, then whatever goods the seller is selling, that must fulfill the purpose of the buyer. Okay, where the buyer expressly or by implication makes known to the seller the particular purpose for which he needs the goods and depends upon the skill and judgment of the seller, whose business is to supply goods of that description, there is an implied condition that the goods should fulfill the purpose. Like an example, he is clearly telling to the seller, I want a lorry for a hilly area. I want it in a heavy traffic and a hilly area. Please give me the lorry, or please give me the car. Do choice for me. The seller can clearly tell that I don't want to make a choice. I don't know anything about this, but you do your choice. So many vehicles are here. You can purchase it as you wish. If like that the seller tells, no implied condition is there. But if the seller says, okay, I will give you, and if he selects a car which can be used only for a sophisticated area and all, in metros, okay, not in a hilly area, in a good condition road, and he uses it in the heavy traffic in a hilly area, then his purpose is not fulfilled, because the car will be broken down in few not months but few days only. Okay, so implied condition as to quality or fitness for his purpose is not there. But if the seller makes a representation or the buyer tells the purpose, then implied condition will arise. Okay. Similarly, when the goods are sold in the name of a brand, there also implied condition is not there. Or when the goods have been sold generally for general people and the buyer is like having some disease and all, or having some aspects relating to that cloth or something, then the implied condition is not there, because his purpose or his condition is not known by the seller. So the general rule is what? There is no implied condition as to quality or fitness for the purpose. Means the goods sold by the seller may not fit for the purpose, because the seller does not know for what purpose the buyer is purchasing. But where the buyer has told the purpose, relies upon the skill of the seller, then implied condition will be there. Okay. Today we have just seen 3 implied conditions. In the further video we will continue this lecture. Okay. Bye bye.